Is Rick and Morty finally back? That's the question I'm going to answer today. A lot of people online are saying yes, and I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. But to answer whether or not it's back, we have to establish what it was to begin with. And what it was incredible. I remember being 11 years old and stumbling across this show for the first time, and oh my god. From doing 9/11 in an inception to get Morty's grades higher in math class, to a butter robot that is nihilistic and wants to kill itself, to Mr. Meeseeks. I mean, it was just banger after banger after banger. The early version of the show it was just incredible. I've always loved sci-fi and I've always loved comedy, and no other show was doing it like this. And it was also self-aware. It knew that it was, kind of a bit crazy, and it leaned into it, and it had fun with it. It was simultaneously confident in what it was, while also not, well, until later on, becoming too self-indulgent. And then came the pickle incident. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a big season 3 hater, but frankly, the fandom became a little bit crazy, and there was a long time where I definitely wouldn't have even made a video like this, because why would you want to be associated with such a toxic fandom? But it peaked there, and it's been on a slow but noticeable decline over the seasons. I mean, it's had 6 seasons between that season 3 peak and now we're on season 9. I mean, it has been a long time. And although the decline didn't seem to happen overnight, it was definitely over that many seasons noticeable, to the point where now talking about Rick and Morty feels like you're mentioning some old-timey cartoon that no one ever heard of. It's not really maintained at all its cultural relevance, and for good reason. Frankly, the show was no longer funny, the concepts felt overdone, and the show didn't have those strengths I mentioned before. It felt like it wasn't confident in what it was, and it felt like it was the same way that the meme always went, the copy pasta. You have to have an incredibly high IQ to understand Rick and Morty, and it kind of made fun of the fans, how they interpreted themselves as being intelligent. And it seems like the writers had a very similar mentality, where the writers seemed to think that they were very smart and very clever, and they were holding on to the greatest thing in the world, and that sense of entitlement just completely ruined the show. It became too meta, it became too on the nose, it became, frankly, just repetitive, boring, and the charm that initially made the show incredible was lost. The nihilism, which was originally mind-blowing, emotional, and sometimes funny, emotional being when Morty has to literally switch dimensions in season 1 and leave his entire life behind, and funny as in the butter robot wanting to kill itself. That theme became tired very quickly. And so this weird middle portion of the show, really seasons 4 to 8, they were not bad. It's weird because I kept watching the show over the years, and there was like a couple good episodes this season. There was some good stuff here and there. The lore was always awesome, but the show was almost, it felt embarrassed to take itself seriously. It felt embarrassed to pursue the lore, which made the show really cool. And the funny moments were just fewer and far between as time went on. And the only reason I kept watching the show is, frankly, inertia. It's one of those things that I loved so much that every time a new season came out, it's like, great, here's something I can put on in the background while I play video games or work on this or that, or just something mindless I can shove and have it be novel enough to keep my interest while also being familiar enough that I can just use it as a comfort show. But not until season 9 did I actually start to really enjoy the show again, and not for the same reasons that I initially did. I'm just gonna be completely frank, the show is not very funny anymore. Whenever it tries to be edgy, it just comes across as lame, and I think part of that is what really set Rick and Morty apart at the beginning was that it was one of the few adult comedies willing to actually be adult, in a world where Family Guy was making jokes about characters puking, and Rick and Morty was willing to go all the way and say, fuck it, we're gonna joke about 9/11, we're gonna joke about suicide, we're gonna joke about the most screwed up things he possibly can, and that made it interesting, that made it fun. But as time went on, that kind of became the entire pop culture. Once Hollywood and other media corporations realized that this was popular, they just did it over and over and over again. And now we have shows like The Boys and a million other properties which are just trying to be these over-the-top, in-your-face, big, crazy, edgy things, to the point where it's no longer cool. It's no longer really funny to just go, 9/11. But 10 years ago it was. 10 years ago people were not making those jokes, and so the show was going to always have a tough position. The way the pop culture has moved has normalized the things which made the show unique. And so I think they've gone in a really good direction now by basically completely switching up the style of the show. They fully embrace the fact that, look, we're just sci-fi Rick and Morty, or we're just sci-fi Family Guy. They've been able to more or less admit that and say, well, what else made this show unique? And it was always the wacky premises, it was always the settings, it was always the odd heart that the show had here and there, and it was always the fact that it had bizarre sci-fi concepts that were vaguely funny. And this season has done an incredible job of that. See, episode 1, they hit us with an evil Morty lore episode. Fucking incredible. Really pushed the character forward, pushed that whole narrative forward in a really interesting way that I and most people probably didn't see coming. And that really set the stage for this season, being one that takes those elements of lore and sci-fi a lot more seriously. Episode 2 was the Ted episode, where it's revealed that Rick cuts himself off from all of his memories and takes a vacation where he just gets to be a normal person. What an incredible episode. Rick goes on, even though he's not Rick, he's Ted. He doesn't have any of his memories, he's still intelligent. And so he eventually finds out he's in this simulation fake planet and eventually breaks free of it. And then eventually thinks that becoming Rick again will make him happier, that being smart again, being fully connected to himself, will make him happy. And of course, it doesn't. It was such an interesting sci-fi concept, and it did that theory of that initial premise of him being a sad, drunken scientist really well. Was it particularly funny? No, not really. But it was good. Episode 3, was that the Kung Fu episode? There was a Kung Fu episode, and then another one. The Kung Fu episode was okay. Rick and Morty do Kung Fu. It was fine. It was okay. It was alright. And the B story of Jerry fucking the pool robot, that was pretty stupid. Definitely the weaker episode of this season. I mean, this series has always been like that. They try and go and do out there things, and inevitably half of them end up being pretty crap. But in this most recent episode was the one where they reintroduced Snowball. I saw a short earlier talking about how Justin Roiland, apparently back in season 1 or 2, he was doing a podcast and he says, yes, and Snowball will return in season 9 as a joke, and it turns out he did. What a crazy coincidence. I think that's a funny reference. If they did that on purpose, that's really clever of them. But this episode, I think both stories are pretty good. The A story carries it, where Morty goes back to the dimension that we saw him go and that we saw Snowball go to in the season 1 episode 2. And it turns out they built an entire society, and now the dogs of that society, the intelligent dogs, are doing to humans exactly what we did to them. It turns out that this new world, ironically, has a human-like species on it, and now they're being treated as pets. And so Morty eventually aligns with them, throws this revolution. He makes it very clear not to take a stance, but then him and Snowball end up reconnecting, and I thought that was really nice and wholesome. It was a really well done episode. It was really well done. I think bringing that character back was good, and they didn't just do it like, oh, remember when this cool thing happened? I think showing the way that the dog planet perpetuated the same thing that the humans did was really thoughtful and interesting to see. Reminds me a lot, in some ways, of the spaghetti episode, which was one of the few absolutely incredible ones that they've done in the last few years. If you know, you know. And the B story for that episode was Jerry takes a anxiety-eating worm and is no longer anxious. He now has confidence and can go do human things. He lands a job, which is good character development for him, I guess. That one was like, it was okay. It was fine. It was nothing special, right? It was a B story. But yeah, I mean, I think there's probably one episode I'm missing. Let's look this up so far. I'm pretty sure I forgot about one of these. Can't be that good if I already forgot about it. But if I look up season 9, we're gonna see season 9. Jerabud, Ricker runs through it. Oh my god, how did I forget the password episode? That was one of the best ones. That one was incredible too. Rick makes this person who is best friends with them, what's his name, Keith? I don't even remember. But he uses Morty and their relationship as a two-factor authenticator. And then Morty tries to save his life, pretty much fails. And then Rick has to call in a lock specialist, and there are these cloud beings, and they come and they inhabit Jerry's body, and they're like, ooh, so much mass. That was actually one of the few ones that was kind of funny. That actually got me cracking up. And then I love that we saw so much of of Rick's bunker. That was always one of the cool things that we didn't see much of in the show, and I always wanted to see more of. But yeah, I'd say these are all like 9 out of 10 episodes at least. Probably the first one being a 10 out of 10. I mean, these are like 4 of the best episodes in the entire show. The only one that was kind of bad was the Kung Fu one. But even that was like, it was fun enough. It was okay. Was it anything to write home about? No. Am I ever going to rewatch it? No. It wasn't insultingly bad like the Dragon episode though. So yeah, that's pretty much it.